Hey everyone! Tonight we are going to step into the kind of job interview you absolutely didn't apply for, and yet somehow you're already hired. You're the royal tailor, technically respected, theoretically appreciated, and practically stuck hemming trousers for grumpy dukes most of the time. Except tonight something has shifted. There's this sharp knock at your door past midnight, the kind of knock that already tells you that whoever's on the other side isn't here to negotiate about prices. When you open it, the hallway isn't empty. There's a figure standing in the lantern glow, cloaked head to toe in black, and behind them, the air smells faintly like smoke and iron. They don't bother with introductions, just a single sentence. The Queen requires you now. The Queen. Not your queen, not the one up in the marble palace with gilded ceilings and polite banquets. No, this is the Queen, the one who doesn't live in the sunlit world at all. The Queen of the Underworld. And apparently she needs a new gown, and apparently you're the only one who's going to make it, which is a compliment, sure, but also a solid death sentence. You probably won't survive this, but hey, at least you'll go down in history as the poor idiot who tried. The cloaked figure doesn't even wait for you to collect a bag. One moment you're barefoot in your workshop, scraps of velvet still on your shirt, and the next you're yanked into a stairwell that shouldn't exist. The steps coiled downward, slick as obsidian, spiraling endlessly. Every clack of your heels echoes like a drumbeat, and the deeper you go, the thinner the air gets. It smells of candle wax and soil, as though the whole staircase has been dug through a graveyard. You glance back, just once. The wooden door that led to your workshop has vanished, replaced with a slab of black stone. Forward is the only direction, and your guide isn't slowing. They glide more than walk, the cloak whispering against the walls. You start to mutter a protest. Maybe the Queen could consider silk robes instead? I've got some wonderful silks already cut. But your voice dies as the staircase opens into a cavern. It's massive, cathedral tall, filled with light that isn't light. The glow rises from the ground itself, veins of molten color threading through black stone. At the center, an obsidian bridge stretches across nothingness. Beyond it looms the palace, spires crooked like claws, windows like unblinking eyes, and the air vibrates faintly, as though the whole structure is alive. You swallow hard. Tailors don't usually faint at architecture, but this is pushing it. Your guide gestures sharply, and you step onto the bridge. No railing, of course, just an endless drop into shadows. You decide not to look down. One sarcastic slip about the lack of handrails dies on your tongue, because honestly, you don't need to tempt fate here. The palace doors are taller than city gates, carved with reliefs of screaming faces. The faces move when you look too long. With both hands, your guide pushes, and the doors swing open soundlessly. Inside, a hall of black marble, polished so clean that you see your reflection shiver on the floor. Torches burn along the walls, blue flames flickering without heat. And at the far end, she sits, the Queen of the Underworld. She is not beautiful in any safe sense of the word. She is a gravity well. Your eyes keep sliding back to her, even when you want to look away. Her gown is made of shadows, but not woven. They cling, shifting across her frame, rippling like smoke, curling like ink in water. Her crown looks carved from the bones of something with too many teeth. When she speaks, her voice is velvet and knives. You're the one who they call a master of thread. You don't trust yourself to answer quickly, so you just bow, forehead nearly brushing the cold marble floor. You mumble something like, "Yes, Your Majesty," but it comes out a little strangled. Good. I require a gown. The coronation of a new season approaches. My court will gather. I must eclipse them all. Her eyes, pale silver, glinting, pin you where you kneel. Do you accept? The room is silent except for the pop of blue fire. Refusing probably isn't on the menu. Accepting means entering a contract with someone who could snap you like a needle. But she's waiting. You force a smile, the kind you give to customers who ask for impossible alterations in half an hour. It would be my honor. Her lips curve, not into a smile, but into something sharper. Then rise, tailor. You will serve. The floor tilts slightly as you stand, dizzy from both fear and awe. Behind you, the cloaked guide slips away like smoke. You're alone in the hall. Just you, your terrified heartbeat, and the queen of the underworld watching like a predator that hasn't yet decided to eat you or keep you as a pet. She gestures, a flick of her hand. A door opens at the side of the throne, revealing a corridor lined with statues. Her voice follows you as you stumble toward it. Begin at once. You will have what materials you require. Fail, and you will remain in my realm as a shade, sewing the hems of ghosts forever. No pressure, right?
The echo of her laughter clings to your ears as you step further into the workshop, like it's stitched into your very skin. The mannequins stand stiff and headless in rows, their pale wooden torsos gleaming under candlelight that burns without wicks. They look a little too alive, like they might swivel toward you if you speak too loudly. And sprawled across one of the tables, an impossibly long measuring tape, slithering as if it's breathing. You already regret saying yes. The queen herself drifts in without footsteps, her shadow gown spilling behind her. She doesn't need an entrance. She's already the entire atmosphere of the room. Her gaze flickers around the workshop, then locks back on you. You will measure me. Right. Easy enough to say, less easy to do when the person in question radiates enough power to fry you for sneezing at the wrong time. You shuffle toward her with the measuring tape in hand, trying not to notice how it squirms. The air cools as you approach, like she's pulling heat into herself. Arms out, Majesty? You ask, forcing some professional tone, the one you normally use when rich merchants complain about seam allowances. Her lips twitch, not a smile, more like she's amused you dared to speak. Still, she extends her arms, and suddenly you realize this is not like measuring anyone you've ever measured before. Her body doesn't have edges. Shadows ripple around her shoulders, swallowing the candlelight that burns without wicks. The tape tries to slip away from your grip as if it doesn't want to touch her. You pin it down with both hands, muttering under your breath. Stop wriggling, it's bad enough without you having an opinion. The tape freezes, like it understood you. The queen arches one silver brow. You scold your tools? You glance up at her and shrug. They usually listen better than nobles. For a moment, silence. Then, to your astonishment, her voice curls lower, a sound like a blade sheathed, soft amusement. Perhaps that is why I summoned you. You loop the tape around her waist, or at least where her waist should be. The shadows swallow your hands to the wrists, cold like water, and for a heartbeat you feel yourself tugged inward. You wrench back quickly, tape clutched tight, chest hammering. Her eyes glimmer, not apologetic, not cruel, simply entertained by your panic. Do not falter. The gown must fit as if it were born from me. You nod mutely, scribbling measurements on a scrap of parchment that's already curling at the edges, as if the paper itself resents being used here. Every mark you make feels heavier than it should, like the numbers themselves carry weight. When you kneel to measure hem length, the floor trembles faintly beneath your knees, as if the palace itself wants to watch. Shadows lean closer, stretching toward you, and you deliberately focus on your pencil line. She doesn't move while you work, not a twitch, not a breath. The stillness is worse than any fidgeting customer. At one point you mutter, "Most people complain during fittings," and then wince at yourself. but she doesn't strike you down. Instead, her voice brushes your ear, closer than it should be. "Do I look like most people?" "No, Majesty. You're considerably taller, for one." That earns you something dangerous in her eyes, a flicker that could be irritation or humor. Hard to tell which. Either way, you survive the measurements, scribbling notes about impossible proportions, a waist that isn't consistent, height that changes when you blink, shoulders that extend farther than fabric logically allows. You'll need cloth that bends reality itself. Wonderful. Just wonderful. When you finally step back, your hands are shaking, your face clammy. She lowers her arms, the shadows curling back against her. "What do you require?" Your throat dries. She's asking what you need to begin, and the answer isn't a stiff drink. You force yourself to think like a professional, cataloging what's missing: cloth, thread, needles, but none of it can be ordinary, not for her. "Cloths that won't frail when touched by fire," you say slowly, "thread that won't snap if pulled by forces, needles strong enough to pierce whatever you're made of." You stop before you can add, "and maybe a replacement heart for me when this one burns out." The queen tilts her head, considering you like a chess piece. Then she lifts her hand. Shadows ripple, and from the darkness step figures, her attendants. They're not entirely human, faces veiled in gauze, limbs unnaturally thin. They bow in unison, waiting. You speak, you require, provide. They scatter like ravens, gliding silently between the mannequins. You watch as spools of thread appear, gleaming faintly like strands of captured lightning. Bolts of fabric settle themselves on tables, colors shifting unnaturally: midnight blue that flickers into crimson, velvet that ripples like water when no one touches it. A set of long, thin needles gleam bone white, as though carved from something alive. You're almost distracted enough to forget the queen is still right in front of you. Almost. "Begin at once," she commands, stepping backward into the darkness. Her shape dissolves like smoke sucked into a chimney. Only her crown's afterimage lingers in your mind, sharp as shattered glass. The silence that follows is thicker than any fabric. You glance around at the attendants, but they've already vanished too, leaving you alone with supplies that hum like they're whispering to each other. You rub your face with both hands. "Perfect, just perfect. I always wanted to sew something that could eat me." Still, you set the measurements neatly on the table, because, really, what else can you do? It's not like you can walk out of here.
The first thing you notice as you step back into the corridor is how quiet the palace is. Not peaceful quiet, the kind of quiet that hangs after a scream, the sort that makes your stomach clench like you've walked into the middle of someone else's argument. The statues lining the hall still loom, though now their carved eyes seem to follow you more deliberately. Maybe that's just nerves. Or maybe you're already losing your grip. Both are entirely possible. Your boots click against marble as you're led farther in, not by your own choice. The door behind you creaked open on its own, and some invisible pressure insists you move forward. You try once, experimentally, to stop walking. The air clamps around your chest until your knees buckle forward again. Right, so the palace wants you mobile. Nothing creepy about that. The hallway spills out into a balcony chamber, and for a moment your panic is drowned out by the view. Below stretches the underworld proper. If you were expecting endless fire and brimstone, you're wrong. It's worse and stranger. Miles of blackstone plains ripple like water, dotted with thorn trees that pierce the sky.
Rivers of silver fire carve channels through the landscape, their currents dragging glowing fragments like drifting bones. Whole fortresses float on chunks of rock that drift lazily across a sky with no stars. And scattered everywhere, shadows walk. Some resemble people, some don't. From this height, you can't tell if they're alive, dead, or something else entirely. But their movements sync faintly, like they're dancing to a rhythm you can't hear. You lean on the balcony rail, not because you trust it, but because your knees want to buckle. It's almost beautiful in a horrifying way. The palace breathes behind you, the stone vibrating faintly under your palm. You mutter. Of course the walls breathe. Why wouldn't they? Makes insulation a nightmare, I'm sure. There's a rustle of fabric. You whirl, half expecting the queen herself. Instead, it's an attendant. This one isn't veiled, though you almost wish they were. Their face is pale and thin, features blurred, like someone painted them with watercolors and then smeared their hand through the wet lines. Their eyes are pools of shadow, no whites at all. "Tour," the attendant says, voice hollow and echoing like you're hearing it through a tunnel. They gesture with an elongated hand, beckoning you to follow. You consider refusing, just for the rebellious satisfaction, but the palace walls groan when you hesitate. You sigh. Fine, field trip it is. The attendant leads you through corridors that twist impossibly. At least twice you're sure you've walked in a circle, passing the same cracked statue with its head tilted wrong. Yet somehow, when the next door opens, it reveals a completely different space. First, the kitchens. You expected cauldrons bubbling with, lava stew? Instead, a cavern full of long iron tables, where shadowy figures chop ingredients that writhe like worms until sliced. One creature stirs a pot that moans. Another grinds glowing crystals with a pestle, sparks flying across the table. The smell is indescribable, something between cinnamon and burnt hair. The attendant glides past without explanation. You hurry along, refusing to look too closely at what passes for flower. Next, the gardens. Yes, gardens. Rows of plants glow faintly, their leaves translucent, their flowers opening and closing like mouths. Trees drip thick black sap that hits the soil with a hiss. A gardener, if you can call them that, leans on a silver rake, their body little more than a skeleton wrapped in vines. They glance up at you, sockets blooming with flowers, then return to work. You mutter, "Lovely. Definitely stealing that landscaping idea," before hurrying on. The tour continues, armories filled with weapons that hum when you walk past, a library where books whisper incessantly, as if jealous of each other, a ballroom that echoes faint music, though it's empty, the chandeliers dripping with candle wax that freezes instead of melting. Through it all, the palace looms with impossible geometry. Stairs that shouldn't connect, doors that open sideways, ceilings that stretch taller when you glance away. And always, always the sense that you're being watched. Not just by the statues or the servants, but by the palace itself, as though every wall has eyes stitched into the stone. Finally, the attendant halts before a tall archway carved with spirals. The doors here are blood red, studded with black iron rivets. They push them open, and the sound is like a sigh escaping the whole building. Inside, the throne hall again, but from the side entrance. The queen is still there, lounging on her seat of bone and shadow, one hand resting on the armrest like she owns not just this palace, but the concept of sitting itself, which she probably does. Your attendant bows low, then glides backward until they dissolve into mist, leaving you standing at the edge of the hall again. The queen doesn't look up immediately. She's toying with a goblet, tilting it between her fingers. Liquid darker than wine slides against the rim. When she finally turns her gaze toward you, it pins you like a butterfly to a collector's board. "You have seen my halls," she says, her voice echoing as though the chamber speaks with her. "You understand, then, that what you make must not only adorn me, it must honor this realm." You nod, because what else do you do when the Queen of the Underworld demands validation? "Of course, Majesty," you say, your voice cracking. "I'll make something worthy of all this." You gesture vaguely at the walls, at the idea of eternity carved into black stone. Her lips curve, the faintest smirk. "Do not flatter, create." And with that, the shadows ripple around her throne, and attendants reappear, gesturing you toward the exit again. The tour is over. The message is clear. You're not just making a dress. You're sewing a declaration of power for a woman who rules death itself. No pressure. None at all.
The door slams shut behind you, and you're back in the workshop, if it can really be called a workshop. It's not a room meant for comfort, or for creativity, or even for sanity. It's a stage where the palace itself is waiting to see if you'll survive your own job. Candles float overhead, burning with that unnatural blue fire, their light sliding over the mannequins like pale hands. The fabrics you requested earlier now line the walls in bolts that shimmer and twist like they're alive. Threads coil lazily on their spools, their ends twitching in the air, as though eager to be used. The bone needles gleam faintly on a velvet cushion, and the cushion growls softly if you get too close. And then, of course, the attendants return. This time there are 3. They move without footsteps, their gauze-veiled faces tilted in your direction, as if their entire existence is simply to remind you that you're not in charge here. One carries a tray of shears big enough to decapitate someone. Another sets down a warped mirror, its surface rippling like water. The third places a block of chalk that looks suspiciously like compressed ash. You clear your throat. Very thoughtful. Nothing like a homicidal sewing kit to make a tailor feel at home. No reaction. They just linger, waiting, watching. You hate being watched while you work. Usually it's fussy lords who lean too close to make sure you're not wasting their fabric. But these things don't blink, and that's somehow worse. You drag a mannequin toward the center table. It screeches across the marble like nails on glass. The sound echoes far too long, as though bouncing around a cavern of unseen mouths. Great. Another reminder that this place loves to mock you. Spreading the measurements across the table, you glance at the fabrics again. One bolt is deep crimson, but when you stare longer, it turns black, then green, then back to crimson. Another looks like plain silk, but the moment you touch it, it hums against your skin and leaves frost where your fingers brushed. You try to chalk. It squeaks faintly when you sketch out the first cut lines on the mannequin, then crumbles into dust faster than normal. The dust doesn't fall. It drifts upward, forming tiny whirls of symbols in the air before fading. You swallow hard and mutter, "Sure, haunted chalk. Why not?" The attendants don't move, but you can feel their satisfaction. You set the shears to fabric. They don't cut cleanly at first. Instead, the blades sink like knives into meat, parting fibers with a wet sound that absolutely shouldn't come from cloth. But when you lift the cut piece, it's smooth, perfect, seamless, like the material wanted to resist only to test you. "Lovely," you whisper. The material's got a sense of humor. Piece by piece, you start shaping the foundation of the gown. Sleeves, bodice, skirt panels. Every cut feels heavier than the last, like each scrap removed is tugging at your chest, siphoning something invisible from you. By the time you've pinned the first sleeve mock-up to the mannequin, your hands tremble slightly. And then, as if they were waiting for that moment, the attendants move. One glides closer and sets the warped mirror directly in front of you. Its surface ripples until it clears, showing not your reflection, but the queen's. She's seated on her throne exactly as she was when you last saw her, watching you through the mirror. "Progress," she says, her voice somehow both distant and right behind your ear. You stiffen. "Yes, Majesty. Cutting base shapes now, just establishing structure." You gesture vaguely toward the mannequin, as if you're a nervous student explaining homework to the most terrifying professor alive. Her silver eyes narrow slightly. "It must fit as though it were born from me. Do not forget this." "Absolutely not forgetting," you blurt, maybe a little too fast. "Tattooed in my brain already, burned in there, possibly literally." Her lips twitch, and then the mirror ripples again, her image vanishing into liquid shadows. You're left with your own reflection, except your reflection doesn't move with you. It just stares. When you test it with the wave, it smirks faintly before catching up. You slap the fabric across the mannequin, forcing yourself to focus, because if you let yourself spiral, you'll be the ghost tailor she threatened you with, stuck hemming phantom robes for eternity. And you've seen the stitching here. Eternity's hems are a nightmare. The attendants linger until you finish cutting every piece, then glide backward into the wall, vanishing as if swallowed. Alone at last. Or at least alone-ish. The palace breathes again, walls trembling, as if satisfied that you've started. The workshop doesn't feel quite so hostile anymore, just expectant. You rest your palms on the table, exhaling through your teeth. First cuts made, first confrontation survived. Only the rest of the impossible gown to go.
The fabrics wait for you like predators in velvet coats. You can feel them watching, even though they don't have eyes. Rolls lean against the walls, shimmering as if breathing, each bolt an invitation or a threat. You run your hand across the nearest one, dark blue that flickers red when your fingers graze it. It's smooth, cold as marble, and when you pull your hand away, faint sparks trail across your skin. Not painful, just wrong. You mutter, "Well, that's not ominous at all." A low rustle answers you. The fabric shifts slightly, edges curling upward, like it's leaning closer for more. You yank your hand back and point at it like it's a misbehaving cat. "Boundaries, we're going to have boundaries." Across the table, another bolt quivers, threads rippling across its surface. This one is pale, almost translucent, shimmering with faint veins of silver. When you touch it, your fingertips vanish for half a second, as though they dipped into another world entirely. You pull back fast, heart hammering. The missing half-second feels like it tugged something out of you, though you can't quite place what. "Perfect," you grumble. "Fabric that steals time, just what I needed for a deadline." Still, you know these are what the gown requires. Normal silk won't do, not for her. The queen didn't summon you here for anything mortal. You pull the bolts closer, unfurling yard after yard. They spill across the marble floor, shifting colors in the candlelight, crimson into gold, gold into void black. Each drape hums faintly, like a distant chorus of voices whispering over one another. Not words exactly, but the tone is insistent. "Use us, use us." You ignore the voices and focus on tailoring basics, foundation, structure, stability. Even if the materials are wrong, the rules of construction are still yours. At least you hope so. You slice sections with the massive shears, each cut releasing a faint sigh from the fabric, as though it resents being divided. You lay one piece against the mannequin, pinning it into place. It clings unnaturally, like the mannequin is pulling it tight around itself. The fabric molds without you adjusting, shaping into curves and folds that match your sketches too perfectly. Almost like it knows what the queen wants better than you do. You whisper, "I don't suppose you'll just finish the whole gown for me?" The fabric doesn't answer, unless the faint ripple at its hem is agreement. You're not sure you want to know. The spools of thread twitch on the table. Thin silver strands glint, unspooling slightly, as though eager. You hold one up, testing its strength. It hums against your skin, vibrating like a plucked harp string. You tug, expecting it to snap, but it holds with unnatural resistance. Threading the bone needle is harder than it should be. The eye seems to shift away when you try to focus, refusing to accept the thread until you mutter a frustrated, "Oh, for hell's sake, stop moving!" To your surprise, it freezes, and the thread slips through perfectly. You glance around the room. So, everything here just needs verbal abuse to behave, huh? Fantastic management system. The mannequin doesn't disagree. You take a breath and push the needle through the fabric. The sensation is wrong. Not resistance, not softness, more like piercing skin. The cloth shivers under the stitch, tightening itself around the form. The hum in the thread grows louder, resonating with your pulse until it feels like it's sewn directly into you. Halfway through the first seam, the workshop door creaks open. A shadowy attendant glides inside, bearing a tray. On it rests a goblet carved from black glass, filled with liquid that smolders faintly. The attendant sets it beside you without a word, bowing stiffly. You eye it warily. Is this a drink or a trap? No answer. The attendant vanishes, the door clicking shut behind them. The goblet's surface shimmers, sending faint curls of smoke upward. You hesitate, then mutter, "If it kills me, at least I'll stop sewing," and take a sip. It tastes like metal and pomegranate, sharp and rich. Heat floods your veins, and suddenly your hands stop trembling. The fatigue weighing your arms lifts. The stitches flow faster, steadier, as though the drink lubricated not just your body, but the very act of sewing. You catch yourself smiling grimly. "All right, dark power juice, you and I are gonna be friends." With renewed steadiness, you continue stitching, fabric wrapping itself more obediently around the mannequin. The whispers grow clearer now, still not words, but tones that rise and fall in approval. You don't want to admit it, but the gown is already magnificent, even incomplete. Layers shift like storm clouds, colors shimmering in unnatural gradients. It's beautiful. It's terrifying. It's exactly what she wants. And you're only at the beginning. The workshop is too still, as if it's holding its breath. You lean back from the mannequin, wiping sweat from your brow even though the room isn't warm. The fabric draped across the frame glimmers faintly, alive with its own pulse, waiting for more. You know you'll need thread, lots of it. The silver spool you've already used is nearly empty, and you don't dare check the bottom. Something tells you it doesn't run out so much as it decides when you're finished. As if on cue, the door groans open again. You flinch, half expecting the queen herself. Instead, two attendants glide in, carrying something between them. At first, you think it's another bolt of fabric, but the closer they come, the clearer the wrongness. It isn't fabric. It's glowing, translucent, fluid but solid, like strands of light woven together. And you feel it before you understand it, an ache in your chest, deep in your lungs, the way you feel when someone whispers your name in a dream. The attendants set the shimmering bundle onto the table with reverence. The glow pulses softly, like a heartbeat. One of them tilts its blurred face toward you and speaks in that hollow, echoing voice. "Thread, spun from souls." Your stomach drops. "I beg your pardon?" The second attendant leans closer. "Souls taken in battle. Souls harvested at the river. Stronger than steel, stronger than death." You glance at the glowing strands again. They coil faintly, as though listening. Threads of people, threads of what used to be people. You run your fingers through your hair, muttering, "This is definitely against union regulations." The attendants don't move. They just stand there, waiting. The silence presses against your ears until you realize there's no way out of this. She expects you to use it. She gave it to you for a reason. Reluctantly, you reach forward. The thread is warm when you touch it, warm like breath. It hums faintly against your skin, almost purring, almost sighing. The moment you lift a strand, a flicker jolts through your head. An image, blurry but sharp enough to sting. A battlefield, screams, a hand reaching upward before fading. You drop the thread instantly, heart racing. It slithers back into the bundle with an almost offended twitch. The attendants don't blink. One simply gestures again. "Stronger than steel." You grit your teeth, pick up the bone needle, and try again. Threading it with the glowing strand is harder than with the silver. The thread resisting, squirming as though it doesn't want to be bound. You whisper, all right, calm down," and to your horror, it stills. The soul thread slides into the eye of the needle perfectly, humming in a way that matches your pulse. You mutter, "Well, at least we're both unhappy about this," and bring the needle to fabric. The first stitch burns. Not your skin, your chest. Each pull feels like it's tugging at something inside you, binding you together with whatever, or whoever this thread used to be. The gown shifts, sighing louder now, colors deepening as though enriched by the souls sewn into its seams. The whispers around you swell into something almost like voices, but they aren't speaking to each other. They're speaking to you. "Don't stop. Keep going. We're not finished." You clamp your jaw and force the stitches in, trying not to shudder each time the thread pulls. The fabric molds tighter around the mannequin, shifting into elegant curves, folds that look like ribs, then vines, then waves. It doesn't stay one thing, doesn't want to. You're not building a gown, you're containing a storm. By the time you finish the last stitch of the bodice, your arms ache, your chest burns faintly, and your reflection in the warped mirror looks paler than you remember. The gown, however, is magnificent, elegant, terrifying. And it's only the beginning.
The bodice gleams faintly on the mannequin, shadows pooling across its surface like oil slicks. You step back, rubbing your chest with a soul thread seen to tug at you hardest. The burn has faded, but the echo remains, like a second pulse beating beneath your own. You know what comes next? Fittings. No tailor in their right mind skips fittings, not even when the client is the queen of the underworld herself. The problem is, how do you tell a monarch made of shadows, nightmares, and questionable physics to stand still while you poke them with pins? The answer arrives sooner than you'd like. The air grows colder, the candles gutter, and the warped mirror ripples. Her image doesn't step into the room, it fills it, her presence stretching across every wall until you feel her weight on your lungs. "Bring it," she says. Her voice is velvet dragged across a knife's edge. You swallow. Right. Fittings. Every queen's favorite part of the process. The gown is heavy in your arms, heavier than cloth should be. It's not just weight, it's will. The fabric pulls against you, almost eager to leave your hands. By the time you stumble into the throne hall, it feels like you're carrying a living thing. She waits exactly where you knew she would be, lounging across the throne as though the world itself is simply her chair. Her silver eyes follow the gown, not you. The moment you step close, she rises. Shadows peel away from her form, reshaping into limbs, curves, angles, a body that refuses to stay consistent in size or shape. She stands taller than you at one moment, shorter the next. You clear your throat. Majesty, if you could lift your arms. Her lips curve. Command me. Request. You blurt quickly. Strongly request. Politely. For a terrible heartbeat, she doesn't move. Then, with deliberate slowness, she extends her arms outward. Shadows peel back, bearing a form that looks human in outline, though it's more suggestion than substance. You drape the bodice over her shoulders, and the fabric shivers as if it's found its rightful home. The soul thread hums louder. The gown tightens around her frame without your pins, sculpting itself to her body. Your job should be easier, but the effect is unsettling, like watching the garment fall in love with its wearer. You circle her cautiously, trying to adjust folds where the shadows resist. The cloth is clingy, almost jealous, tugging against your hands when you try to move it. Relax, you murmur, half to the gown, half to her. We're just getting a feel for it. The queen tilts her head, silver eyes never leaving you. You speak as though it breathes. Feels like it does. You mutter, then louder. Fabric's got personality. Happens more often than you think. She hums, low and amused. And what does this one desire? You hesitate, your fingers tracing the seam down her side. The hum of the thread pulses through your fingertips, thrumming into your bones. It wants you, specifically you. Everything else, it doesn't care. The queen's smile sharpens. Then it has taste. You almost drop your pins. The fitting continues, though fitting is a generous term. Each time you shift the cloth, her shape seems to change beneath it. Shoulders broaden, then narrow. Waist tapers impossibly, then flares. Height stretches, then contracts. You have to chase measurements like a drunk man chasing dice. At one point, you mutter, "If you could pick a size and stay there, that'd be fantastic." Her eyes glitter. Why should I limit myself for your ease? Because even immortal monarchs look bad in uneven hems, you shoot back before you can stop yourself. A pause. The throne hall grows colder. Then laughter. Low, dark, rolling off the walls until your knees almost buckle. The queen of the underworld is laughing at you. Not cruelly, not kindly, just amused that you dared. You exhale shakily and keep working. At last, the bodice settles. The gown seems satisfied, clinging perfectly no matter her shifting size. You step back, squinting critically. Not bad. Need sleeves, though. Otherwise, your court will just think you forgot to finish. Her silver gaze snaps back to you, sharp as a knife. You will continue. It isn't a threat. It's a promise.
By the time you lug the gown back into the workshop, your arms ache like you've been wrestling a wolf, which, frankly, wouldn't surprise you here. The gown shifts faintly on the mannequin when you drape it down again, as if sulking that it's no longer on her body. You point at it like it's a misbehaving child. Don't start with me. I'm the only one with thumbs. The warped mirror across the room ripples once, showing not the queen this time, but faces, blurred, distorted, as if they're pressed against glass from the other side. Courtiers, maybe? Their outlines are gaunt, their garments shimmering in fragments. Their voices leak through like whispers beneath water. The tailor thinks he can please her. He will fail, they always fail. The queen will keep his hands when she's finished. You freeze with a spool in hand. All good, a peanut gallery, every artist's dream. The faces sneer, mouths stretching unnaturally wide. One woman, with a crown of what looks like antlers, presses her cheek to the mirror. She favors him, that is dangerous, for him, for us. Another, a man with eyes glowing like coal, hisses, "He sews with souls. That thread binds not only cloth." You try to ignore them, laying fabric for the sleeves, but they don't stop. Their voices dig, sharp as pins. Look at him, shaking. He is afraid. He will bleed into the gown before it is done. Finally, you slam the shears down on the table with a clang. Listen, I've worked with noble brats who changed their minds 6 times about a hemline during the same fitting. If you think creepy commentary is going to rattle me, you'll have to try harder. For a moment, silence. Then a ripple of laughter, mean and thin. The mirror fogs, and the faces blur back into shadows. You exhale, shoulders tense, and mutter, "I definitely shouldn't have mouthed off to dead aristocrats." Still, the work doesn't stop. You measure, cut, and pin the sleeve fabric, trying to focus on the familiar rhythm. But your hands tremble a little more than before. The whispers had an edge of truth. They weren't wrong about the thread binding more than fabric. Every stitch hums against your chest now, a reminder that the gown is as much a cage for you as it is for the queen's vanity. The silence in the workshop doesn't last long. A faint scratching sound rises from under the table, like nails dragging across stone. You crouch, peering underneath, half expecting a rat. Instead, a scroll lies curled there. Black parchment, sealed with bone-white wax. It wasn't there before. You hesitate, then break the seal. Inside, elegant script curls across the page, shimmering faintly. Tailor, you think yourself chosen. Do you not wonder why the last did not finish? The bottom of the parchment is blank, but you don't need it to say more. You picture another tailor here, hunched over these same fabrics, sweating over the same impossible task. You glance at the mannequin again, at the way the gown seems almost too eager to cling. You roll the parchment back up and shove it behind the fabric bolts. Nope, not my problem. I'm still breathing, and that's my entire business plan right now. But even as you thread the needle again, you can't shake the image. Another tailor, their hands shaking, their eyes hollow. Maybe their soul stitched into these very seams. The gown hums faintly, as if confirming. You stab the needle through the sleeve fabric harder than necessary. Shut up. The sleeves lie pinned in place, and the mannequin looks like it's glaring at you for taking too long. You squint back at it. You'll get your sleeves when I find something sharp enough to keep up with you. As if in answer, the door sighs open and 2 attendants glide in. Between them, they carry a black lacquered box nearly the length of your arm. They set it on the table with a delicacy that makes you instantly suspicious. When they vanish, the box stays, humming faintly, as though it has its own pulse. You open it cautiously. Inside, Needles. Not steel, not gold, not anything you've ever seen. Bone. Long, pale, polished so smooth they gleam in the blue candlelight. Each one is slightly curved, almost predatory, like claws. The sight of them makes your stomach lurch. You whisper, "Those better not be what I think they are." The bone needles shift faintly, like they're breathing. One rolls toward the edge of the box, stopping just before it would fall. Your hands twitch backward, but then you hear it, a faint whisper in your head. Not words, but an intent. "Use me." The gown on the mannequin shudders as if in agreement. You grit your teeth. Great. The fabric wants me to use haunted cutlery. Still, your regular needle snaps the instant you tried pushing soul thread through the sleeve's edge. The break echoes like a crack of thunder, and the gown seems to flinch. With a resigned groan, you reach for the bone. It's heavier than it should be, cool in your palm, humming like a live wire. Threading it feels easier, as though the eye opens wider for the soul thread. The first stitch pierces fabric like flesh again, but this time the bone slides through seamlessly, drinking in the resistance. And you feel it. Each pull tugs not just thread, not just cloth, but something deeper. Memories skim across your vision, faces you don't know, voices screaming, laughter breaking, footsteps running across stone. The souls woven into the thread are pouring themselves into the needle, and through the needle, into you. You stagger, gripping the table with your free hand. "Not part of the contract," you rasp, but no one's listening. The sleeve takes shape quickly, almost too quickly. The gown molds itself, pulling taut across the mannequin, perfect pleats forming as though the fabric is showing off. Every stitch with the bone needle is too smooth, too confident, like your hands aren't your own. By the time you finish the first sleeve, sweat slicks your neck and your heartbeat has gone uneven. The gown hums with satisfaction, the shadows on its bodice rippling outward as though reaching for you. You drop the needle on the table. It clatters, then rolls upright on its point, balancing perfectly. You take a shaky step back. The warped mirror ripples again. Not the queen this time. The faces return. "He uses the bones. He is part of it now. He will not last the night." You clench your fists. "I don't see any of you making sleeves." They sneer in silence, then fade, leaving only your reflection behind. You look worse than you feel. Pale, eyes shadowed, a faint shimmer lingering around your chest where the thread keeps tugging. You touch the spot. It's warm. Behind you, the bone needle rocks slightly on its point, then stills, waiting.
The gown watches you, or at least that's how it feels. Every flicker of candlelight makes its shadows lean closer. Every creak of fabric sounds like a sigh. You sit slumped in the workshop chair, bone needle glinting on the table beside you, when the chamber doors burst open. Two guards stride in, if you can call them guards. They're more like suits of black armor with smoke where their eyes should be. Between them, a servant, no taller than your waist, totters forward, holding a scroll with arms that are little more than sticks. The scroll is shoved into your hands before you can protest. The seal snaps open on its own. Ink curls across the parchment, fresh as though written this very second. The queen demands her gown finished by the hour of midnight. You will not fail her. Midnight is not dawn. Midnight is not negotiable. Your eyes dart to the warped mirror. For a half-second, it shows a pale clock face hovering over the throne hall, its hands ticking downward with cruel precision. 11 hours, maybe less. You let out a dry laugh. Oh, sure, plenty of time, no problem at all. Definitely not sewing with demon thread on a gown that wants to bite me. The guards remain motionless. The servant bows awkwardly, its neck bending farther than humanly possible, then shuffles out. The doors slam shut, leaving you alone again. Alone, with the ticking. You swear you can still hear it, echoing in your ears. You rub your eyes and mutter, "Right, midnight deadline. I've had worse. Once had a duchess demand a ball gown 3 hours before the actual ball. Okay, that one didn't come with soul-binding fabric, but still, same energy." The bone needle rocks faintly on its point again, like it heard you. You force yourself upright, rolling your shoulders. The sleeves aren't done, the bodice needs reinforcement, and the skirt, well, the less you think about the skirt, the better. But deadlines are deadlines, even when they're whispered by monarchs who collect the bones of their tailors. You thread the needle again, fingers steadier than you expect. The work comes quicker now, the gown almost eager to help. The fabric shifts under your hands, offering itself, stretching into place. You should be relieved, but instead your gut twists. It's too easy. It's like the gown wants to finish itself. And then you realize it does. Each stitch you make feels less like sewing and more like giving in, like the gown's guiding your hands. You're the tool now. The ticking in your head grows louder. Your throat's dry. You lean back, forcing the needle down on the table before it finishes the sleeve for you. The gown stirs restlessly, its hem twitching like a dog's tail. Yeah, I hear you, you mutter, but I'm still in charge here. The warped mirror shivers again, and this time her silver eyes gleam through. The queen's face fills the reflection, closer than before, her lips curved. "Midnight," she reminds you. "Do not disappoint me, tailor." The mirror goes blank before you can reply. You stare at your reflection for a moment longer, then back at the gown. Its hem rustles faintly, whispering against the mannequin stand. For the first time, you think you see it move, just a fraction, like it's shifting toward you. You swallow hard. Okay, midnight then. I guess I'll die tired.
The skirt fabric sprawls across the floor like a spilled ocean of shadows. You step carefully around it, scissors in hand, trying not to trip. The soul thread pulls at your chest with every movement, dragging your breath thin, but you press on. Midnight doesn't care about your lungs. You spread the fabric wide and pin it into pleats. The material fights you at first, stretching and twisting as though it has its own ideas of style. "Oh, you're opinionated, huh?" you mutter, kneeling to flatten the fold. "Newsflash, I'm the tailor, you're the fabric. Stay in your lane." The fabric doesn't listen. It never does. By the time you've shaped half a circle of the skirt, sweat beads along your temple. You pause to wipe it away, and that's when you hear it. Footsteps. Soft, uneven, circling the room. You whip your head around. No one there. The doors are shut. But the sound continues. Step, drag, step, drag. Your eyes dart to the warped mirror. The surface shows nothing but yourself, hunched and pale. Still, the noise crawls closer. You grip the shears tighter. Not funny. If this is another mirror trick, I'm filing a complaint. The sound stops behind you. Cold air brushes the back of your neck. You spin just in time to see something slide back beneath the skirt fabric. Your first instinct, lift it. Your second instinct,
Absolutely do not lift it. You go with the second. Instead, you press the fabric flat with both hands, pinning it harder into the floor. The gown ripples once, annoyed, but then falls still. Right, you say hoarsely. Rule number 1, don't check under haunted skirts. You stitch faster now, the bone needle slicing through shadows like butter. With each pull, the pleats hold their shape more firmly, the fabric settling into graceful arcs. Still, you can feel the thing underneath it shifting, pacing, as though the skirt is a lid on a jar and something inside is waiting to be unscrewed. The sole thread hums higher in pitch, pulling harder at your chest. Your fingers ache, the thread cutting grooves into your skin, but you don't dare stop. Each stitch is a chain, each pleat another lock. By the time you knot off the first panel, your breathing is ragged, but the floor is still. You sag back on your heels, blinking at the half-finished skirt. You're welcome. That's the only exorcism you're getting out of me. The warped mirror ripples again. A face presses close, too close. The coal-eyed man you saw before. His teeth are bared in something between a grin and a snarl. The jar will not stay closed. You glare at him. Yeah, well, neither does your mouth. Yet here we are. He hisses, and the mirror fogs over, leaving you alone again. The skirt's hem rustles faintly, as if laughing. You shove the needle back through and keep sewing, because the only thing scarier than what's under the fabric is failing to meet midnight's deadline.
The bodice fabric waits on the table, darker than pitch, faint glints of ember red winking along its folds. You eye it like you would a firecracker with a suspicious fuse. Right, you murmur. This'll be the part that actually kills me. You cut the fabric carefully, measuring angles against the mannequin. The edges smolder faintly where the scissors touch, not burning but glowing, like the material has veins of coal. You blow on one seam and it flickers brighter, answering your breath with a hiss. Great. Fire hazard couture. Just what every queen needs. You thread the bone needle again, the sole thread gleaming taut. The first stitch into the bodice sparks, a tiny flare that singes your fingertips. You jerk back, shaking your hand. The sting lingers. Still, you lean in again. Each pull of thread spits sparks, flaring against the mannequin's torso, little fireflies of heat. At first, you curse under your breath, swiping them away. Then you notice they don't vanish. They hover. Sparks hanging in midair, forming a faint circle around you, like you're sewing inside a halo of embers. It should be beautiful. It isn't. The longer you sew, the hotter the air grows. Sweat trickles down your back. Your eyes blur, stung by smoke that isn't really there. The bone needle hums, eager, guiding itself through the smoldering fabric as if it's drilling straight through your ribs instead. Then, the illusions start. Out of the corner of your eye, the embers take shape, hands reaching from the halo, palms glowing red, grasping for your arms. You jerk away, stabbing the mannequin harder than necessary. The gown ripples, heat rising like a furnace. "Don't touch me," you snarl at the sparks. But the smoke thickens, and in it you see faces, mouths open in screams, eyes glowing like molten glass. Their expressions twist with each stitch you pull, and you realize these are the souls in the thread. Every one of them is burning. Your hands tremble, but you keep sewing. What else can you do? Midnight ticks closer. The queen's silver eyes still gleam in your head. The gown seems to drink the fire in, flames dying against its bodice, leaving only the faint shimmer of hot coal patterns across its surface. When you finally tie the seam off, your breath ragged, the halo of sparks collapses inward and vanishes. The workshop falls silent. Too silent. Your ears ring, your fingertips ache, little burns swelling at the edges of your nails. The warped mirror shivers again. This time the queen appears herself. No veil, no pretense. Her gaze is cool, predatory, lips curved in satisfaction. It suits her. She purrs. You sag against the table, wheezing. Oh, good. Glad you're enjoying the barbecue. Maybe next time warn me your bodice is flammable. Her smile only widens. Then she fades, leaving you with the gown, its bodice gleaming faintly, pulsing like the steady heart of a forge.
The skirt sprawls outward now, wide enough to blanket the stone floor, hem brushing your boots as though testing you. You crouch with the bone needle in hand, eyeing the unfinished edge. "You're going to be the problem child, aren't you?" you mutter. The fabric doesn't answer, but it doesn't have to. The hem shifts, just slightly, just enough. When you glance down again, the folds aren't where you left them. You tug the sole thread tight, stabbing through the cloth. The bone needle slides clean, a stitch locking the first section. For a second, it behaves, smooth, compliant. But then, as you pull the thread taut, the hem writhes, the pleat unravels on its own, tugging back against you. Your jaw clenches. "Oh, no, you don't. I've wrangled duchesses with bigger egos than you." You plant one knee on the hem, pinning it to the ground, and sew faster. The gown shudders, fabric snapping like a whip, trying to slither from beneath you. The thread cuts grooves into your fingertips, hot and sharp, but you don't stop. Each stitch drags across the hem like driving nails into something that hates you. And it does. Because the hem starts moving before you touch it, edging closer to the mannequin, then darting back, curling like a snake preparing to strike. The shadows around it stretch, elongating like grasping hands. You jab the needle through again, breath ragged. That's when the skirt lashes. A strip of cloth snaps up, whipping across your arm. The burn is instant, searing through your sleeve. You curse, staggering back. The hem follows, crawling across the floor toward you like a tide of shadow. The warped mirror shivers with laughter, voices you can't separate, jeering in chorus. "Can you keep it still? Can you cage it?" You grit your teeth, snatch the hem with both hands, and slam the needle through. The fabric writhes, but the sole thread holds, glowing faintly with each tug. Another stitch, another lock. You anchor it again and again, sweat pouring down your face. The skirt hisses, actually hisses, as if furious at being trapped. But slowly, reluctantly, the pleats hold. The hem curls under itself, twitching, but bound by thread it can't quite shake. You tie the final knot and fall backwards panting. For a moment, silence. Then movement. The skirt rises. The entire gown lifts off the mannequin base, hovering an inch above the ground, hem rippling like water disturbed. You scramble back until your shoulders slam into the wall. The gown drifts forward. Not far, not fast. Just enough to remind you it's not finished with you. You clutch the bone needle tighter. Midnight's coming, and you're going to behave, because if you don't, she won't be mad at the gown. She'll be mad at me. And trust me, you don't want me angry sewing you in front of your queen. The hem pauses, as though listening. Then it settles, lowering back onto the mannequin stand, pleats falling into perfect alignment. The warped mirror ripples one last time, showing your pale, sweat-drenched reflection. Behind you, the gown gleams like it's grinning.
The table creaks beneath the weight of the ornaments. A velvet-lined chest lies open, overflowing with jewels that don't just sparkle, they whisper. Tiny voices curl from their facets, brushing against your ears like moth wings. You lean closer, squinting at a ruby the size of a quail's egg. "Take me," it purrs. "I'll make her love you. She'll never look away." You snort,
Yeah, because nothing screams professional boundaries like cursed jewelry. The gem pulses faintly, offended. You grab it anyway, careful not to touch your bare skin, and bring it to the bodice. The moment it nears the fabric, the ruby flares, heat pulsing through the thread lines like blood in a vein. The bodice reacts, tightening, seams drawing inward as though thirsty for it. You stitch fast, driving the bone needle through gemstone and cloth. The sole thread hums at a pitch that makes your teeth ache. The ruby hisses, but the sound fades as the gown consumes it, locking it in place. One down, a dozen more to go. You reach for an obsidian shard next. Its voice is low, oily. Break her, shatter her court, wear me yourself. You laugh dryly. I don't even get dental with this job, pal. Pass. Still, you attach it. Each stitch makes your chest tighten, as though the thread is tugging on your lungs directly. When you finally knot it off, you sag against the table, gasping. The obsidian gleams wickedly from the gown, satisfied. The rest come faster. Emeralds that beg you to betray her, sapphires that whimper about drowning, a pearl that screams every time the needle pierces it. You sew them all, binding their voices into the gown's body until the room itself vibrates with their cacophony. Then, silence. The gown stands complete with its ornaments, shimmering like a night sky full of captured stars. But you know better. Those aren't stars. They're eyes, watching, waiting. The warped mirror ripples again, and dozens of reflections of you appear, each wearing the gown. Some laugh, some weep, one claws at its throat. The queen's voice curls through them all. Pretty, isn't it? Power always comes at a price. You swallow hard, gripping the edge of the table. Yeah, it's the price of my sanity. The reflections laugh in unison, then vanish, leaving only your hollow-eyed self. The gown glitters quietly in the corner, smug as any queen.
The final stitches tighten across the gown's frame. For the first time since you began, it looks finished, complete, regal, terrifying. The bodice smolders faintly, gems glint like open eyes, and the skirt curls with a life of its own. You let out a shaky laugh. Well, you're horrifying, which means you're perfect. You wipe sweat from your brow and check the clock etched faintly into the warped mirror. Its hands creep toward midnight, each tick loud enough to rattle in your teeth. Barely 2 hours remain. That's when the air shifts. Cold presses in, sharp enough to bite. The workshop door groans open on its own hinges. Beyond the threshold stretches not the corridor you expect, but the grand hall itself. Black marble floors, towering pillars, and at the far end, the queen's throne. Your stomach lurches. She's calling you. You grab the gown by its shoulders, fabric slick and alive beneath your fingers, and lift it from the mannequin. It's heavier than stone, but it floats just enough to mock your effort. You drag it forward, step by trembling step, toward the yawning doorway. The hall swallows you. Every step echoes. Shadows slip between the pillars, whispering in voices too faint to understand. Above, chandeliers of bone and flame cast cold light over your path. The gown tugs at you, hem dragging like it wants to walk on its own. Halfway down the aisle, you hear movement behind you, slow, deliberate. You freeze. The sound stops. You glance back, empty. The doors to your workshop are gone, replaced by endless black. The gown shivers in your grip,
Its skirt ripples like a mouth trying not to laugh. "Don't you start," you mutter, hauling it faster. At last the throne looms. The queen reclines on it, draped in shadows, silver eyes gleaming. Her smile spreads slow, deliberate. "My tailor," she purrs, voice echoing through the cavernous hall. "Have you brought me what is mine?" Your throat's dry, but you manage, "Fresh off the mannequin." She rises. Her presence fills the hall, taller, more immense than she seemed in the mirror. Every jewel on the gown pulses, every seam tightens, as if thrilled to see her. You hold it out like an offering. The queen extends one pale hand. The gown slips from your grasp, floating into hers as though it always belonged there. She spreads it wide, admiring every cursed stitch, every burning seam. Her smile sharpens. "You have done well," she says. "Perhaps you will live until dawn after all." The warped mirror materializes behind the throne. Your reflection stares back at you, gaunt, trembling, eyes ringed dark. But behind your reflection, another image flickers. You, not in your workshop, not in this hall, but standing in a pit of ash, needles still sewing, forever. The queen doesn't notice. Or maybe she does, and she likes it. She turns, gown draped over her arm, and whispers, "Prepare yourself, tailor. The night is not over."
The queen rises from her throne, the gown draped across her arm like a predator waiting to shed its skin. Her silver eyes catch the light, glimmering as she turns toward the mirror behind her. The glass ripples, shuddering like water struck by a stone. You stand frozen in the hall, bone needle clenched in your fist, chest still tugged by the faint hum of the soul thread. She doesn't look at you when she speaks. She doesn't need to. "It is ready," she says, low and certain, her voice curling through the columns like smoke. The gown shifts in her grip, its hem brushing the marble floor, whispering across it like scales. She steps toward the mirror. The fabric stretches forward eagerly, like it's pulling her instead of the other way around. The warped glass clears. At first you expect another grotesque version of yourself, but instead another chamber unfolds inside the reflection. A vast black lake, a staircase of bone leading down into its surface, and above it all, a sky with no stars, only a red moon bleeding its light across the water. The queen pauses at the threshold. The gown quivers, every jewel glowing faintly, seams flexing like veins pulsing beneath skin. She glances back at you with the smallest tilt of her head. "You will accompany me." It isn't a question. Your throat is dry, but you manage a rasp. "Do I get a travel bonus for mirror hopping?" Her lips twitch, almost amused. Then she steps into the mirror. The gown slides behind her like a living tide, disappearing through the glass. The surface ripples once, then stills. You stare at it. Every part of your body screams to run, but the soul thread in your chest jerks hard, dragging you toward the glass. You stumble, catch yourself, and take a breath you regret. The mirror smells like iron and ice as you press forward. The surface swallows you whole. Cold engulfs you instantly, numbing your fingers and toes. The next heartbeat, you're standing on the bone staircase, the black lake stretching endlessly beneath you. The queen waits halfway down, the gown hovering at her side, hem trailing like smoke over the water. You follow, each step creaking underfoot, certain the staircase will collapse. It doesn't. It holds, carrying you down toward the red glow of the lake. The water ripples faintly, though nothing stirs its surface. You can't shake the feeling it's watching you. The queen stops at the last step.
She raises the gown, spreading it wide, and for the first time you hear it speak, not with words, but with a sound like 100 mouths opening at once, hungry, eager, drowning in adoration for her. The lake answers, a low moan rising from its depths. She turns to you, silver eyes sharp. The hem resists. You will hold it while I wear it. Your stomach drops. Hold it? You mean like a butler holds a train, or like a prisoner holds a chain? Her smile is thin. Yes. The soul thread jerks again, tighter this time, dragging your hands forward until they grip the skirt's writhing edge. The fabric squirms under your fingers, hot and slick, but you cling to it. The queen slips into the gown. The bodice tightens over her frame like molten metal poured into a mold. Gems flare alive and cast blood light across the lake. The skirt lashes in fury, but your grip holds, each stitch glowing as the soul thread binds it down. The lake roars, waves crashing against unseen shores. The bone staircase shudders. You dig in your heels, gripping harder, the gown thrashing like it wants to drag you into the water with it. Then, silence. The gown stills. The queen straightens, radiant and terrible, every jewel blazing, every seam alive. The reflection of the red moon pours into her, and the lake goes glassy beneath her feet. She exhales once, content. It fits.
The lake stills to glass, but the silence is worse than the roaring waves. You stand there, hands locked around the skirt's edge, the bone staircase trembling faintly under your boots. The queen tilts her head, admiring her reflection in the obsidian surface. Every jewel across the gown glows with a pulse like a heartbeat. Not yours, not hers, something else's. "Release it," she commands. Your fingers hesitate, but the soul thread tugs like a leash on your veins, forcing your hands open. The skirt slithers free, snapping back into place against her legs. The queen smooths the bodice with elegant indifference, as if she hadn't just nearly drowned you in cursed couture. She turns her gaze upon you, silver eyes sharp enough to flay. "You doubt me." You blink, throat dry. Doubt's a strong word. I'd call it cautious tailoring. Her lips curve into the kind of smile that makes lesser souls combust. "Careful wit," she says softly, stepping closer, "but wit nonetheless." The air around her thickens, pressing against your lungs until every breath is effort. You realize this is her version of leaning in. The lake ripples again. From its black depths rise faint shapes, faces maybe, mouths whispering soundless pleas. You don't look too hard. The queen, however, does. Her smile falters. Her hand tightens at her side, and the gown quivers like a restless animal. Her voice drops. "They smell weakness." The hem writhes, lifting from the surface, inching toward the staircase. You stumble back, but the soul thread clenches, yanking you forward again. Your arms jerk, and you nearly topple into the water. The queen snaps her fingers. Instantly, the gown freezes. The lake hushes. Her glare pins you in place like a nail. "You will not falter," she says, quiet and cold. "The gown is loyal to no one. Not to you, not even to me. If you loosen your grip on its obedience, it will unmake us both." You try to laugh, but it sounds more like choking. "Oh, good, no pressure." Her shadow falls across you. "There is always pressure in my kingdom. Consider it a privilege." The warped mirror materializes again, this time hovering over the lake. In its glass, you don't see yourself. You see a dozen versions of her, all wearing the gown in different forms. One cloaked in fire, one dripping blood, one nothing but bones laced with thread. They all stare at you with the same patient hunger. Your voice comes out thin. "Yeah, that's comforting." The queen steps up onto the lake's surface, gown flowing like liquid shadow around her. She doesn't sink.
The water holds her, trembling beneath her feet. She gestures to you. Walk. Walk? On the water? Her eyes narrow. Would you rather swim? The soul thread in your chest yanks forward again, hard enough to throw you off balance. You stagger off the last bone step, onto the lake itself. And it holds, barely, like standing on taut skin that dips with every heartbeat. You wobble, arms flailing, but don't break through. The queen watches, amusement faint at the corner of her lips. She turns, gown gleaming like a second night sky, and murmurs, "Do not forget, tailor. It obeys because I allow it, not because you stitched it." The gown shifts again, hem lapping at your boots like a tide eager to drag you under. You swallow hard, mutter to yourself, "Next time I'm sewing pajamas."
The water shudders under your boots, the gown's hem curling and snapping like a leash tugging against its owner. You keep your balance by sheer panic, arms twitching as though you're one sneeze away from sinking. The queen glides effortlessly across the black expanse, every jewel blazing, her silhouette vast beneath the bleeding red moon. The gown no longer looks stitched together. It looks born from her, a second skin of fire, shadow, and teeth. And every stitch pulls at you. The soul thread buried in your chest burns hotter, yanking with each step she takes. You feel it tugging at your veins, dragging your heartbeat into her stride. It's not just that you made the gown, it's that a piece of you is sewn inside it. You grimace, pressing a hand to your sternum. "Okay, this is fine. Shared circulatory system with my boss. Totally fine." The queen doesn't turn. Her voice cuts back across the lake like a blade. "Your thread was never yours. You borrowed it. Do you think souls come cheap?" Your laugh is ragged. "I was hoping for an employee discount." She halts. The gown flares outward, skirt rippling across the lake like wings of ink. She says, "Finish it." "What?" Her head tilts slightly, silver eyes sharp. "You have one final stitch, the seam between servant and sovereign. Make it." You blink, bone needle suddenly heavy in your grip. The gown vibrates under her command, jewels whispering, hems writhing. Every curse sewn into it waits for the last knot. And the thread, your thread, pulses, begging for release. Your knees weaken. "If I stitch this, it's not just fabric anymore, is it?" Her smile is slow, patient, cruel. "No, it never was." The lake groans beneath you, ripples rolling outward like a drumbeat. The needle trembles in your hand. You step forward, every part of you screaming, "Don't!" But the soul thread tugs your arm up, own needle pressing to the final seam across her collar. The jewels shriek in your head, the hem claws at your boots. You push the needle through. The thread sears into the gown. Light blazes across every seam, across her body, across your chest. You scream. She exhales in delight. The lake erupts around you. And for a moment, you feel yourself unraveling, thread pulled from flesh, thought splitting, identity fraying into the gown itself. You see yourself stitched into her shadow, sewn into her skin, whispering with the jewels forever. Then it's done. The needle drops from your hand. The queen lifts her chin, radiance pouring off her like fire. The gown settles, obedient, perfect. She looks at you, silver eyes blazing with satisfaction. "You are mine," she says simply. Your knees buckle. You collapse onto the trembling surface of the lake, gasping. The soul thread still hums in your chest, but quieter now, like a leash pulled taut instead of a chain dragging you under.
The queen turns toward the distant shore. Rise, tailor, the court awaits its unveiling. You stagger upright, boots sinking half an inch into the trembling lake before the surface firms again. Each breath drags like smoke through your ribs, every muscle raw from the pull of the soul thread. The queen doesn't slow for you. She glides forward, the cursed gown trailing in perfect, sinister obedience, jewels glowing in rhythm with her stride. The red moonlight ripples across her silhouette, making her seem taller, larger, a living monument stitched from every shadow in existence. You follow because you have to. The thread won't allow hesitation. Each step she takes pulls you after her, like a marionette tied to its puppeteer. Ahead, a shoreline forms out of the black expanse, smooth obsidian cliffs rising from nothing, carved with jagged arches and flaming braziers. The air grows hotter, thick with incense that smells faintly of ash and roses. And then you hear it. Voices. Not whispers this time, but a chorus, hundreds, maybe thousands, layered and hungry. The queen steps off the lake, the surface hardening beneath her heel. You stumble after her, nearly tripping as your boots hit solid stone. The obsidian path spirals upward toward a colossal set of gates wrought from twisted iron and bone. Behind them, shadows writhe like eager dogs. The queen raises her arms. The gates peel open without a sound. And the court of the underworld erupts in cheers. You blink hard, momentarily blinded by the storm of torches, jeweled masks, and clawed hands waving. The hall beyond the gates is vast, more cathedral than throne room, with spires of black crystal and rows of creatures that should not exist. Horned dignitaries in velvet robes, skeletal courtiers draped in gold, wraiths whispering from within cages of glass. Every eye turns toward the queen, and then toward the gown. The jewels on her bodice flare brighter, answering the roar of applause. The hem lashes like a serpent, tasting the air. And for the first time since you began this nightmare, you realize the gown doesn't just make her look divine, it makes her undeniable. The queen basks in the adoration, silver eyes half-lidded, lips curved in a smile that could shatter cities. Then she turns slightly, just enough for the court to see you standing behind her, pale and trembling, bone needle still dangling uselessly from your hand. The applause quiets. A skeletal noble tilts its head. A wraith hisses faintly. Dozens of eyes narrow at once. You don't need a translator. They don't think you belong here. The queen's voice cuts through the silence, low and commanding. Behold my tailor, the only soul to bind what no other dared touch, the only hands that stitched obedience from chaos. A ripple runs through the court. Some bow, others glare. The gown writhes faintly, as if savoring their attention. You try to steady yourself, force your voice to work. Hi. Great crowd. Love the skull decor. Big fan. A few courtiers hiss. One skeletal hand tightens on a cane made of spine. But the queen laughs, low, dangerous, indulgent. The sound fills the cathedral and stills every whisper. She steps forward, gown blazing, and declares, "Tonight the underworld remembers what it means to kneel." The floor trembles beneath your feet as every creature in the court bows, claws and bones scraping against the crystal floor. The queen lifts her chin higher, radiant and terrible. and the soul thread in your chest pulls taut until you can barely breathe.
The court grovels, a forest of bent spines and clawed fingers pressed against obsidian tile. The queen stands taller, gown blazing like a storm trapped in fabric, jewels humming with a resonance that shakes your teeth. You feel every pulse through the thread in your chest. Each bowing soul feels like it's bowing through you, as if you've been made into a conduit for their worship. Your knees almost give, the queen notices. Without glancing back, she says, "Stand. They bow to me, not you. Do not cheapen it." You force your legs to lock, though your lungs burn. The gown flicks its hem across your boots, like a reminder, move wrong and it'll devour you whole. The queen spreads her arms, and the silence deepens. Behold what devotion creates. Behold what discipline births. The gown is no garment, it is the underworld itself, bound and obedient. The courtiers lift their heads in unison, 1,000 unblinking stares fastening onto her silhouette. A ripple of awe, dread, and fury passes through the hall. Your throat aches. The bone needle dangles from your fingertips, faintly glowing. You don't know why, but the thread inside it hums in counterpoint to the gown. Quiet, stubborn, yours. One skeletal lord dares to speak, voice like grinding stone. Majesty, the gown sings, but it does not sing to us, it sings to him. Every head swivels toward you. The queen doesn't move. Her shadow swallows yours, gown flaring wider, jewels shrieking with suppressed hunger. When she finally speaks, it's soft, razor thin. "Do you question me?" The skeletal lord lowers its skull, but the air doesn't ease. The entire court still stares at you, waiting, measuring. You clear your throat, words spilling before you can stop them. "Look, I just stitched the thing. She's the one making it terrifyingly fashionable. If it's singing, I'm not the DJ." The queen laughs, sharp and sudden. Her silver eyes cut to you, and though her smile is radiant, her gaze says, "You will pay for that later." She raises one jeweled hand. The gown shudders, seams glowing, hem lashing like a whip. The entire cathedral rattles. The gown is mine, the tailor is mine, and together they are bound. Remember this, or be unmade. The court bows again, shivering as if a storm just passed through their marrow. The queen lowers her hand, the gown stills, and for the first time since the mirror, the thread in your chest slackens, only slightly, but enough for you to draw a full breath. The queen turns to you, her expression unreadable. The work is finished. Her tone says it isn't, not yet. Not ever. But she glides forward, gown sweeping the floor, and the court parts in awe. You follow, because the soul thread won't let you do anything else. The cathedral fades behind you, replaced by a corridor of shadows, braziers flickering against walls carved with scenes of conquest. The queen walks as if she owns eternity. You stumble after her, whispering under your breath, "I should have been a cobbler." The gown twitches like it heard you. And somewhere deep inside, in a seam only you can feel, a single thread still hums, not hers, yours. And now the noise of the underworld softens, the jeweled glow fades, the torches dim, and your footsteps grow slower, quieter, until you barely feel the weight of the floor beneath you. The queen drifts ahead, her gown moving like smoke, but her presence no longer presses on your chest. You notice for the first time the hush in the air, the way even shadows seem to sigh. The thread inside you doesn't burn anymore. It's warm, steady, like a candle's flame tucked into your ribs. The terror eases, unwinding into something quieter.
Not peace exactly, but stillness. You realize the gown will always hunger, the queen will always command, and the court will always watch. But here, in this moment, nothing pulls, nothing claws. Your body relaxes, shoulders loosening, lungs filling without resistance. The bone needle dangles forgotten, its glow fading into a soft ember, and the darkness around you becomes less of a threat, more of a blanket, vast, endless, but gentle in its weight. The corridor stretches longer and longer, torches dimming into faint sparks until the queen's silhouette blurs into shadow. You keep walking, each step slower than the last. The floor feels softer, as though it might dissolve into air, carrying you somewhere lighter. Your eyes begin to close, not from fear, but from calm. The underworld quiets, the gown hushes. The last sound you hear is your own breath, steady and deep, carrying you into silence. And you drift there, floating, no longer chased by threads or shadows, just carried, gently, into dark that feels like rest. Sweet dreams.